Welcome to Tefo History channel. My name is Catharina Magrietha Kruger and I will tell you the story behind the his-tory, or shall we say, her story, of Racheltjie De Beer. Grab yourself a cup of coffee and let's start his-torying around. Now before I get to the story or her story of Racheltjie De Beer, I want to tell you about a group of people of South Africa that was called the voortrekkers, people who moved first. They were also called the boers or farmers because that is what they did as a profession. Nearly all of them were farmers. Now in 1806, the English took over the control of the Cape Colony from the Dutch. Then round about in the 1830s, 12,000 of this Afrikaans-Dutch people, or let's say the Boers or voortrekker people, started moving away from the Cape Colony because they didn't want to be under the British flag nor British control. There were many reasons why these people started moving away. And this movement process was actually named the Groot Trek. Groot Trek, the big movement. There were many reasons why these people moved away. One of them was that the English then forced the language English upon them. English had to be spoken in schools, in churches, and the Dutch didn't like that, or the Afrikaans people didn't like that. It is really strange, because history repeats itself. It was actually in the years of apartheid that the Afrikaans people then enforced their language on all Bantu-speaking groups of people of South Africa. All children had to, be taught Afrikaans in schools. It's really strange how history repeats itself. Nevertheless, let's get back to the voortrekkers. So that was one of the reasons why they started moving away. Another reason was because slavery was abolished by the English, and by that stage the Dutch or the voortrekkers or the Boers had quite a few slaves. And then the English didn't pay them or reimburse them enough for their slaves to set the slaves free. That was also one of the reasons why they moved away from the Cape. Nevertheless, these people moved away from the Cape more to the eastern side, to the Transvaal area. Remember, Transvaal means trans is over and Vaal is the color grey. So over the Grey River and also to the Free State. Free State? That's exactly what it says. Free is to be free away from the British control. Now some of the voortrekkers also moved in the southeasterly direction. And they moved more to Natal province. Natal, that means Christmas Day. Yes, the Portuguese sailor sailed around the area of Durban and he named it Natal because he sailed around there on Christmas Day. So some of the voortrekkers moved to this area, and that is where we will start our story of Racheltjie De Beer. Her father, Mr. De Beer, also moved with his ox wagon in the Groot Trek all the way to search for farming land away from British control. And that is where our story begins. Now the De Beer family was already in the Free State province. And then they had to cross the Drakensberg mountains and they were heading for the eastern Transvaal. Transvaal over the Grey River. They were searching for a piece of land to start farming on. Drakensberg mountains. Draak means dragon because in misty weather it looks like the back of a dragon, and that's why it's called Drakensberg Mountains or Dragon Mountains. The Zulus that lived in that area, or they're still living in that area still up to today, they named the mountain Uklahlamba, the barrier of spears, because also in misty weather, the pointy parts of this mountain looks like the points of spears. Needless to say, let's get back to the story. So when the De Beer family moved over this mountain, they camped at the area called Nelskop. Nel was the farmer's surname that lived in the area, and Kop is in Afrikaans a hill, so Nel's Hill. Next to yellowwood trees, they were camping. Now you must remember, in those days, it was no motor cars or motor vehicles that they were traveling with. No, it was ox wagon, and then in front of the ox wagon they had 12 oxen to pull the wagon, and then traveling with them they had huge amounts of cattle. So the De Beers were settling down there at the campground of Nelskop, and it was really bitterly cold in the year of 1843. Bitterly cold in that area of KwaZulu-Natal. In the evenings, it can easily get up to -3 degrees Celsius. Now for South Africa, that is very cold. And in winter, you can get a lot of snowfall there. In summer times, it is extremely hot. The humidity rises because the warm ocean clouds form, and then the warm air would push against the Drakensberg mountains, building up big storms, electrical storms. Summer temperatures can be up to 30-35 degrees Celsius, and then in the late afternoon you have this electrical storm. But the De Beers were there in the winter. Now on a particularly gloomy day, they heard that there was a huge storm approaching the area where they were. It was going to be a snowstorm. So everybody gathered, and then they said, let's just go and herd all the animals together closer to the ox wagons so that they can be safe and sheltered against the cold, snowy weather. So Racheltjie De Beer was 12 years old and the little brother was 6. They went with their parents as well as other men and women and children to go and get all the cattle and sheep, everything together, and bring them to the wagons. And then suddenly, Racheltjie noticed, oh my goodness gracious, waar is Frikkie? Where is Frikkie? Now you would ask me, who is Frikkie? Now in those days, it wasn't uncommon for children to have a pet calf or a cow or a sheep. So when Racheltjie saw that Frikkie was not around, she started panicking and crying. And she was yelling, Frikkels, Frikkeltjies, Moo, where are you? And still, he didn't come out of the bushes or out of the veld. And then they decided as the group of people, because everybody loved Frikkie, let's go and search for Frikkie before the storm hits us. And they went out, and the little brother of Racheltjie and Racheltjie went with. Racheltjie and her brother, they were too slow for the group, and they were getting more behind and more behind, away from the group. It was a very hilly area, so their little legs couldn't keep up with the group. And the grass was very tall. The grass that grows there is called the narrow-leaf turpentine grass. If you rub it between your fingers, it smells like turpentine. And the animals don't really love to eat this grass. But the poor little young brother of Racheltjie couldn't even see above the grass. That is how tall it was. Racheltjie was starting to panic. And slowly but surely, she realized that the storm was getting closer and closer, because she couldn't even see them to the tops of the Drakensberg mountains, or the Dragon Mountains. She started panicking, and she realized that they were lost. And her brother looked up to her and he said, Racheltjie, waar ben wij? Waar is de groot mense? Racheltjie, are we lost? Where is all the adults? Racheltjie trying to just tell him, keep on moving, Boetie. My little brother, keep on moving because otherwise we're going to freeze to death. The snow started falling. They couldn't see in front of them because the wind was howling and the snow was in the little girl's eyes. Her hands was frozen. Her face was frozen. And the little brother started crying. What are we going to do, Racheltjie? Where are we? And she said, please don't cry, my little brother. Let's just keep on walking, keep on walking. And at one stage, she saw a big ant hill in front of her. Now, the next part of the story has got two theories. The first theory was that when Racheltjie stumbled across this big ant hill, she took a rock and she not cut it open, but she hammered it open and she hollowed it out and her little brother could get into this big ant heap. The second theory was that an aardvark, now aardvark is a kind of pig-like animal that is here in Africa, that the aardvark hollowed this anthill open and ate all the termites and ant in it, and then Racheltjie's brother could get into the hole. I think the second theory makes more sense because imagine now this big anthill in front of you, and even if Racheltjie had a very sharp stone, it would take her days to hollow out this anthill. For the anthill or termite mounds are very, very hard because with the saliva of the ants, it mixes with the mud and then it becomes very, very hard to break open. So I think the second theory makes more sense, that the aardvark had opened up the hole and then Racheltjie told her brother, come here little Boetie, kom hier, kom. Then she took off her little bonnet, her voortrekker kappie or her bonnet, and she wrapped it over his head to cover his head because she knew that you would lose a lot of heat through your head. She covered it up and he was still crying, and she realized then she has to do more. What she then told him was, little brother, I will take off my clothes and I will dress you in my clothes, that everything that I've got, even my shoes and my socks. And so that is what she did. Then she told him, please huddle up in a fetus position, cross your arms in front of you, and then please just get into the hole. And he was still crying. And then with her naked body, Racheltjie covered the opening of this ant hill. And then to calm him down, she was so cold, but she took all her strength and then started singing to her little brother. Slaapie kan nie meer, die fees in die kraal, skapies en bokkies, varkies. Then her brother stopped crying and Racheltjie knew he calmed down, and she told him, Boetie, please just stay awake. Don't fall asleep. Even if I'm asleep, please just keep your eyes open. Please don't go to sleep. The snow was falling and falling, and the wind, Racheltjie couldn't even feel her body anymore. That is how cold it was. And while still singing the last notes of her song to her brother, she went quiet. The snow stopped falling. The jackals started howling. And then it went quiet in the early mornings. The next morning, her mum and dad, as well as the rest of the search party, found their little bodies. Racheltjie was covered with snow. She was frozen to death. When they took her away from this anthill's opening, they couldn't believe it. The little boy was alive, and Racheltjie saved the little brother by laying in front of the opening, keeping him warm inside. They couldn't believe what she did for her little brother. They took him out and they are holding very, very close to them. And they were just praying, thank you very much for keeping him safe, Racheltjie. Now, in 2012, there was a dispute if the Racheltjie De Beer story really happened. For you see, in April 1921, the South African poet Eugene Marais wrote in an article for a women's magazine, Die Buurvrou, or The Neighbor. He wrote there the whole story of Racheltjie De Beer and what a heroine she was. But just a few months earlier, there was a little girl in America that saved her siblings from a snowstorm, giving her life to actually keep them safe. Her name was Hazel Minner. It happened in America, in Dakota, and just 2-3 months afterwards, Eugene Marais told the Racheltjie De Beer story. Now, if it was a true story or not, in South Africa, we still believe that Racheltjie really existed. And let's don't kill a hero story that tells us such a nice story about heroism and of a time period of people that left everything to travel across mountains and to find a better future. History lovers, this was then the story behind the his-tory of Racheltjie De Beer. If it's true or not, that I can't tell you. But join me next time, histouring around. In my next videos, maybe it will be about his story, her story, animal story, or who knows what else. Happy histouring around!